without listing off the litany of terrible tragedies that are Ireland of 2014, because I think we're all well aware of what's wrong in the country, where these ideas that we're trying to advance emerge from is from ordinary people like ourselves, trying to find solutions to the problem that's there. And a lot of us have come from protest backgrounds, if you like. We've been involved in campaigns up and down the country for quite a while. And some of us have come tired of saying, well, why is our life a life of protest? Why are we protesting against our own government? Is this not wrong? So in trying to analyse what's the current situation in the country, the conclusion that we have is the biggest wrong in the country today is that the people are effectively excluded from the democratic process and consequently have no say in how our country is run. This is fundamentally what is wrong. Yes, there's an economic crisis, there's a social crisis, political crisis, all kinds of symptoms that are terrible in the country. But underlying all of them are that as a people, we are ruled over. We do not rule. We do not decide the policy of our own state. We're not engaged in making the decisions that are made in our name. So there's been momentous decisions made in our name, including apparently we've handed over our sovereignty, an impossibility in itself. But we've decided to bail out gamblers and speculators, all of these things. These decisions have been made in our name, and we have had no part whatever in the making of those decisions. So this is fundamentally what is wrong. A lot of people have, say recently, protested against property tax, against household charges, against hospital closures, and so on, all of which are terrible outrages against the people. They are an imposed policy. So we think, rather than fight the symptoms of what's wrong at every step, that what the people of Ireland need to do is reckon with the underlying cause of the problem. We must stop applying band-aids, right, and find the person who's cutting us. Right? We must actually find the root cause. And the root cause, and thereby, if we can grasp it, the key to grasping the future of our country is democracy, is the empowerment of the people. And setting that as being the condition for progress, in other words, nothing will be settled in favour of the people until the people are the ones who settle it. Given that that's the scenario, we start to think, well, what is holding us back? And two elements. Number one, we ourselves are holding ourselves back because we keep electing politicians and political parties and handing over our mandate to them. So we mark ballot papers, they go off for 5 years, do what they like. They lie through their teeth. They even tell us in the media that that's what you do in an election. You tell lies. So we keep voting them. So we have responsibility for that. So the first thing is the people of Ireland must stop handing over to anybody, including to us. The people must retain their mandate. So aside from ourselves being responsible in terms of handing over to somebody who turned out to be liars and so on, one of the instruments which affects or works against the people resolving the problems in the country is what we call the party system. Now, having investigated this, all kinds of facts suddenly jumped out that we were never conscious of before. One of them being that in Connacht na hÉireann, which is the foundation law of the state that we live in, it is the thing which keeps us together as a people. Everything is subject to the Constitution. And in that book, there is no mention of political party, none whatsoever. I couldn't believe it when we went through page after page, and where is it? It's not mentioned. And what drove us to look for that was that all the electoral laws in the country are written in favour of political parties. So you were wondering, well, why is this? But we always thought political parties, well, not always, but of recent years thought political parties are actually just akin to being private clubs. That's all they are. People come together around some set of objectives, however noble or otherwise those objectives may be. They come together around some agreed ideas they have, some common factor, and they further their interest, that they are a narrow vested interest. And it's a narrow vested interest as an actual fact, because less than 2% of the entire population of Ireland have any membership of any party. So even if all the parties are bunched together, there's still a tiny vested interest. Yet our electoral laws are written in their favour. So this is wrong. And when you look more, you see it in the Oireachtas. All the standing orders are written to favour the parties. we see that our public money is used to finance the parties. The Oireachtas gives over 12 million a year to political parties. I'd say several times that figure is given through the local authorities to them. The European Union, I don't know how much money they give out, but bucket loads to the political parties, because the European Union favours the development of party politics. If you remember in the last 20 years, this is the big cry all over the world to spread multi-party democracy. Now we have a different view of what they were actually doing. So these are private clubs of narrow vested interests in their own right, competing with each other, but actually at the same time agreed on the one thing. And the one thing they're agreed on is that they rule the country over the people. They do not engage with the people. When it comes to election, you remember, Lawrence, 3 years ago we were discussing who selects the candidates. And why are we allowing private clubs to select who should be a candidate in the election? And as we know, these selections are usually, well, at the time they were made in the back of smoky pubs as envelopes get passed and promises issued and threats issued and favours received and called in. This is how candidates got selected and still get selected, except there's now smokeless bars. And that whole system of the selection of candidates and who gets to run on the party ticket is done exclusive of the people, outside of the people, any reference to the population. And of course, because it's based on the giving and receiving of favours, the person who's best and most skilled at that game comes to the top. So when you take the layer from common to regional committees right up to the top, the biggest wheeler dealer by definition gets to the top. So the biggest wheeler dealers, in other words, the most unprincipled individuals you could find in the land, become the leaders of the state. And I don't know if leaders is the right word, because they don't lead the people, they dictate to the people. They enrich themselves and they preserve, even though they have different parties, they carry out this faction fight in Dáil Éireann across the floor, as if they're arguing out policy, and if only the right argument won its favour, that somehow we get some relief or get some advantage. But it's never the case. It's always a game, right? And as we think more about how our democracy is run, you look at that whole scenario in the Dáil, it's the same in council chambers, this idea of the government bench and the opposition bench. The concept is alien to democracy. Why have we any TDs or councillors who don a hat saying that they are opposition? Who are they opposition to? Their role, according to Bunreacht, is to represent a constituency. That is their role. Nowhere in that can I see that they should say they're opposed to anybody. They should simply represent the wishes of the electorate they're from, not their own conscience. That's not provided for either. They're there to represent constituencies. Constituency is the only organisation of the people mentioned in the Constitution. So the role and task of a public representative in Ireland is to represent the constituency, be that a local electoral area or city ward, or be it a Dáil constituency. It is to represent. That means there should be no opposition. We should have no games, no slagging matches inside the Dáil. But this system, which is very well defined in Bunreacht, which is, as Bunreacht itself says, the result of the deed of the people of Ireland over centuries to assert our freedom and our democracy. It wasn't by accident that these things fell into the book. It was because they could do nothing else. Had they done anything less, the people would not have accepted it back in 1937. There's loads of other things in Bunreacht which one might question, but those fundamental points are very valuable and completely correct. It says it is the right of the people to decide all questions of national policy. Period. But when do we get asked? It says the role of TD is to represent constituencies. Right? It says the role of local government is to provide a forum for the democratic representation of local community. That's what it says. So we should insist that that's what these things do. So there are private clubs out there who have hijacked our democracy. It is defined, okay, we don't need to break it up and rebuild a new one. We just need to implement the Constitution, what is there already. Except that means, that requires that the people should step forward and empower themselves. We can't do it if we're candidates in this election. We can't rescue the people. Only the people can rescue themselves. They have to take responsibility, which means we have to have the painstaking discussions on doorsteps and everywhere we go, and like here, to try to create the consciousness amongst people of their own entitlement. That was hard won after centuries and centuries of struggle, and it has still not been realised. Because for 90 years since the foundation of our state, the people have not ruled. It's been thwarted and our rights denied us. And that is why our country continues in deep crisis. Nobody in any position of government, nobody has a plan for the development of Ireland to serve the people of Ireland. Their only plan, if you listen to them day after day, is what can they sell here, what can they hand over, where can they invite in new corporates to exploit our resources. They see nothing in Ireland. They see there's no value. They've no, as we have said, they've no love for the Irish people. They've no respect for our ability. Yet we have built half the world. Our population is uniquely in world history stunted. We should have 3 or 4 times the population if our growth was allowed to develop in a normal manner, the same as any other nation on earth. Like, once again, in this recent period of crisis, 7 odd years, 500,000 of young people have been forced to emigrate. It is enormous. Imagine at the start when they were discussing NAMA and the bank guarantee, as someone said, 500,000 of our children will be gone. This is of huge proportion. And they say, oh look, we have to cut our cloth to measure and so on. We are being lied to through their teeth. This is an immensely rich country. According to IMF today, we're the 14th richest country in the world according to our GDP. According to the World Bank, I think we're number 19. According to the CIA, we're the 20th richest country in the world. We are the biggest exporter of beef on the planet. Imagine, little Ireland, right? We export enough food every year to feed over 30 million. But there's people in Dublin City hungry. There's kids who can't, they have no future, right? Young kids coming out of school, they should be full of the joy of life to say, let's get working, let's earn a wage, let's contribute to the society, the school and learn their books and everything, and now what? Boom, we're going to cut your dole, you better go, right? That's what, when a young person today comes 18 and their future is, there's the labour exchange, right? Yeah. They walk in the door, they're handed forms, right? There's someone came in to us recently enough, they were handed 10 forms, the names of various credit unions and banks around Cork City. They had to go in, this lady, young woman, welcome to adulthood, visit these 10 financial institutions, get them to sign and stamp that you're broke, that you have nothing. Imagine that. Someone who should be full of life, right? So they're destroying the future of our country. And the only reason I'm mentioning these little things is because it is an immensely serious problem, and we have to think soberly what our approach to this is. It is not good enough to just rail against it with anger and say, this is wrong, we'll stop it now tomorrow. Yeah. Because someone's going to say, how? How are we going to stop it? And we who've put together these ideas that are the People's Convention, if you like, just over 3 years ago at this stage, that was itself the result of lots of debate and discussion, and since then continued debate and discussion as to how can we have an understanding of what's wrong, and we have an understanding of what is required to fix it. And what's required to fix it is the empowerment of the people, that the people decide. And if the people are deciding, we would not make decisions to impoverish future generations. We wouldn't have our parents, our senior citizens left without home care and so on. These are not the policies of the people. So who's imposing them on us? So we've been trying to work out how do we put together a plan and an initiative which is capable of bringing together the whole people of Ireland, right? And we think we have done that. It's evolved over the past number of years, and its latest evolution is this document we call the People's Contract, which is why we're here, right? This is a document which outlines the rights of the people, who we are. It derives from Bunreacht. But it says that Bunreacht is a document in which we ourselves affirmed our rights. Bunreacht didn't give them to us, they are our rights, right? But we affirmed them by writing them down in this constitution. This document invites people to unite, regardless of ideology. We must move away from all things which divide the people. The thing which unites us is that we're Irish people, or we've made our homes in Ireland, and therefore we're equal stakeholders in the future of our own country. So that's enough to unite us. We don't need to concern with what social class you're from, what religion do you express, anything. What's the colour of your skin, it doesn't matter, right? If our future is bound together, then we are entitled to equal democratic access and equal say, not more or less than anybody, the same as Enniskillen. We're entitled to an equal say in the future of our country. That's the thing which should unite us. The things which have divided us in the past have been ideology, but we say, actually, some people like some variation of what they think might be socialism, some like anarchy, some like any philosophy you like. And we've always looked at these things in the past of saying, oh, look, if you like my brand of socialism, we'll organise the workers and it's their historic destiny to bring down capital and all that. This is all bunkum. It's not that the social theories don't have a validity or don't have a contribution to make. Of course they do. But they are not the basis for dividing us. We must stop that. So this People's Contract sets out the conditions of representation as defined in our Constitution, but with a bit more in there. It says, for example, that it's no good us going and electing when we think is a great individual. Say, Lawrence, we'll elect you, Lawrence, because you've obviously shown to be a good character and you'll represent us and save us. Thank you, Lawrence, right? No good, because unless the people in the constituency are organised to support Lawrence, he'll be just eaten up. Or he'll be left in a room speaking to the wall, right? Ignored. If necessary, you'll be knocked down the street someday, right? This is what happens, and this is what happens all over, right?
They usually start with the bride.
Yes, an envelope, yeah. But the thing about it is, we say that if our communities and constituencies are not yet organised, which I believe is the case, nowhere in the country are they organised sufficiently for the people to be exercising their power. So as a candidate and as an elected representative, we have to take on the role of organising the constituency, the people, as the decision makers, right? Now, there's two principles in that. For the people to be engaged and making the active decisions, first we have to undertake, as far as our resource allows, every constituent must be informed of all the decisions coming before the local council in this case, right? And second thing is, every constituent must be equipped with the means through which to exercise their decision making, however that can materialise. I know, for example, the chap in Limerick, what's his name again?
Mark Griffin.
Jason Griffin.
Sorry.
His commitment, he published in his leaflet, is that he will have a public meeting every single month, come hell or high water. All decisions will be at the table, and whatever people decide in those meetings, that is exactly how you vote, right? It's limited, but at least it's a known factor, right? And if the value of what we're saying is that if Jason follows that and people see that what they've decided in this local meeting is what is being followed on Limerick City Council, then they say, yeah, well, we are being represented. Because this is the lacking. The people are not represented. The parties are represented. Whips decide things. Party pact and so on. All these devices they have, standing orders exclude you and so on. Actually, the whole tragedy of the party system is, the ultimate insult is when you go to vote, the parties are allowed to advertise on the ballot paper. They have their logos on it that we pay for. So they're allowed to actually advertise as we go to vote. Everybody else has to be 100 metres away or something from the polling station if you have flyers or anything. In fact, I don't even know if you're allowed to hold flyers at all, are you, on the day?
No, but within a certain distance. Yeah.
But the parties can put logos on the page. That's the ultimate removal of what democratic principle would say, that the citizens should have an equal right to elect and to be elected. So they take that away from us. So through looking at this situation, you see that actually our democracy is completely and utterly hijacked. And that is why the likes of Alan Shatter and Enda Kenny and the Micheál Martins and Brian Cones and Hoppies and all them before, they act with such confidence and arrogance because they know they have us caught by the throat. because they have the system in place. It doesn't matter if Fianna Fáil and the Greens mucked up the last time. Sure, look, Tweedledum and Tweedledee who are in now, and now they're trying to boost Fianna Fáil again with a view to maybe getting them back.
Yes.
And that's what they will continue at. And in the meantime, the actual reality of policy economically and what the state does is continues on the same trajectory, with no difference. So this tries to set out the means. The content of this is such that if representatives live and act according to this document, then the people will be represented. And maybe going beyond the meeting once a month whereby Jason and Limerick will take his direction, that we'll actually institute a system whereby every month, every voter in the constituency receives a little booklet containing a summary of decisions coming before the council every month, and then another page in it listing all the community meetings that are going to take place across the constituency, at which all the public representatives will be in attendance. And then maybe the next few pages, a ballot page, which over a 3 or 4 week period, that if voters can decide to post in their ballot, maybe they could be allowed to register for online voting if they choose to do so, and so on.
Yeah, so technology is there.
It's completely
It's too
there.
expensive to be like that. We've just 27 in our electoral area, 27,000.
Yeah.
So it's not practical to do a leaflets. You have to do the online.
No, it's completely practical.
Mass mailing, you can do a mass mailing.
Yeah, hang on a second, right? In Cork City, and I'm quite sure it's the same here, as councillors resign, they have a system of what they call gratuity, which I don't think that there's any entitlement to. Like local representation is a part-time job, right? There's one of my local councillors, actually, Jim Carr, is resigning after 40 years, I love to say, looking down his nose at the people. Right? The guy is a teacher. I know he's retired now. He might be retired as a teacher now, so therefore he has that pension, right? He's been given a handout of €100,000 into his family. Exactly.
He's a nice guy.
Because they can, that's why. But the point is, the councils already waste so much money that if we put a fraction of it in towards informing and having a system of consultation, so that the people have to say, we benefit so much more. And
We end up costing less in the end.
And you're then saving a lot more on useless projects, right? Where I live in Cork, up the road from me, there's a small little roundabout. It's there for forever. Never a problem, never delay in driving through it, ever. And the engineers and city council decided they were going to remove this now, and a big complex now of cycle lanes and traffic lights and pedestrian ways near the Silver Key. It's near Douglas, yeah. They spent millions on it. And there was a huge petition collected, nearly signed by the whole area, saying no. And they went ahead anyway. And they've wrecked it. Now it's a constant delay. But they make all these silly decisions, right? Well, it's not silly, stupid decisions. So if the people are engaged, they can stop this going on. One of the other questions that keeps coming up to us is, well, what about all these policies, right? Like if some of us come from household charge background or whatever our favourite thing was, anti-fracking or against pylons or whatever, like the temptation therefore is to go and pursue that policy question. And we think that's a mistake. As far as we're concerned, people, all we need to do and all we should do is raise the issue of democracy. The issue is who will be represented. That's the issue of the election. It's not whether you're good at fixing potholes or whether you have a good angle for bringing tourists into an area. Those are, in my view, irrelevant, right? The people of Ireland have policies. They know policies that they want already. They don't need us or the parties to tell them, right? What the people are missing is the means to implement the policies they already want. This is what they're missing. And what we are advocating is to put in place the means through which the people can exercise their own decision making and implement their own policies, supervise their implementation, check up on them, and also agree to the principle that representatives can be recalled should they fall foul or lose favour with the people. Now, of course, there's no law in the country at present to say that you can recall an elected representative, but this People's Contract sets the principle that just as we have the right to elect, by definition, therefore, we have the right to unelect. So we have to proclaim that right, and that we do that in the People's Contract. And in time, as soon as the people elect enough of their own candidates, then this will become law, and the standing orders will be changed, to favour democracy and remove such devices as the whip and party packs, all of which are in effect conspiracies to not represent the people.
Yeah.
That's what they are. They're conspiracies against the people. Because if they deny the representative the ability or try to drag them away from their constitutional duty to represent the constituency, then this is a conspiracy against the people. Like I said at a public meeting in Cork, that if I'm elected as a councillor, which I'm a candidate, that I would put forward, I forget what I said now, something to put forward a motion to recommend to the people of Cork not to pay for the water.
Okay.
Right? But I didn't say I'd be putting forward a motion in City Council. I said I'd be putting a question before the people to say, should we do this?
Yeah.
Right.
So I will be, as an individual constituent, going to the monthly meeting or whatever forum we can manage to put together, maybe weekly, and I'll be putting on the list, as a citizen I'm entitled to, saying I think we should as a city take a stand against the imposition of water taxes, or we should take a stand to say let's go for the 15% reduction, and let's also have a motion to condemn Minister Hogan for imposing all these policies to begin with. But I can't take it upon myself individually to say, because I want to, I'll put it on the agenda in council. No, it has to come from the people. And you are the only one, if you're a people's candidate, that you are the only one advocating. And that policy is to have the people empowered.
Yes, make the decisions.
Like we said earlier, the people already know what their policies are. They know they want education for their kids. They'd like them to have some future prospects. We want to look after our senior citizens. We want the roads to be drivable. We want to, develop our city, our economy and stuff. We want health services. People know what they want in life. They already know their policies. What they're missing is the means to implement those.
Yeah.
And what we want is to encourage people to empower themselves to deliver this mechanism for themselves. That's the greatest policy in the world. Number one, all the constituents and the voters must be informed of the business that's already coming before council. Like motions that go on City Council, I know in Cork anyway, they take months to come through. They're proposed on the floor, they're fired off to some committee, and they're bounced around for several months, and they eventually maybe come back up, or maybe they're killed in the process,
So,
right? Let me go through one second. Is like everybody must be informed of what business is coming through, and they must have the means through which to exercise their decision making, which means including proposing policy. And this is one of the differences that we are putting forward. Like today, nobody in the country has a means through which they can propose policy, unless you compromise yourself, you join one of these party clubs, join the favours and all that kind of crack, and then in 20 years' time you might get to the top and have some influence, right? Or you might not. But the democratic approach is that you, as an individual, should have the means whereby you can go and say, I propose in City Council that we now make footpaths 3 metres wide everywhere, right? And the way has to be clear as to how that happens. So in the case of Jason in Limerick, I was saying, he has put down saying there will be a public meeting once every month, because he's trying to cut his cloth to measure, right? A public meeting once every month, what's decided there is what happens. So therefore, people in his area should know, if I want to make the footpaths 3 metres wide, I must go to that meeting, put my hand up and say, I have a proposal.
And how is it decided at the meeting, yea or nay?
Show of hands. Majority.
So the democratic process works.
But normally the decision is by consensus.
Absolutely.
Ordinary people generally don't get so contentious that there's a vote.
Right.
It's normally we discuss the issue and we reach a consensus.
Right.
So that's how the individual participates, and that's how you as the representative also has your say, is in the same forum with everybody else. In fact, I said earlier on, when we developed these ideas, what we've been trying to do for the last couple of years is remove all the barriers to having people build a single movement of the people, right? So even if you don't want to mention the People's Convention, that's fine. You don't have to identify with this. The only requirement we ask people is that they sign the contract, the People's Contract. And we have people who are People's candidates who prefer to think that they're part of a different organisation name. In fact, conceivably, somebody who's a party member of a party can come in here, and if they genuinely agree and act out the role of the People's Contract,
then party show.
Well, yes, they would, of course, right? But that doesn't preclude. You see, people have a right to have a party if they want to.
Yes.
It's a democratic right to form associations and all that, and we don't deny that. But the issue is, do they act democratically? Now, none of the parties today do that.
No.
But it doesn't mean that something wouldn't emerge sometime.
Yeah.
So we're not against it per se. To identify as being People's Convention isn't a requirement.
No, but I was going to say the People's Convention movement underneath that.
Yeah.
I thought so many times about is it a
Yeah.
party, and I thought people are getting confused here. So I thought to put movement underneath it. But
Which leads to a very important point, right? The very important point being, like, it is to be important, right? Like I said, like, the problems in the country are so serious that people do need to give strong thought. Otherwise, as to what the solution is, otherwise we're wasting our time, right? And let's not waste our time. If it means taking another 5 years to get it right, then let's do that, right? But the issue is, we are saying that all the candidates should come forward, should sign the People's Contract and make that their gospel, right? Embrace this whole concept of democracy, including recognise that we have to learn about it, including how to answer all these questions and stuff. It's a learning process all the time. This is very different than someone simply regarding themselves as being an independent candidate. In fact, I don't personally like the word independent. A better word would be dependent candidate. That we are dependent upon the people, right? Because what would you be independent of? Of what?
Yeah.
You're supposed to represent the constituency. So you're dependent upon the constituency, right? So this is a movement of the people. The thing which binds us together is adherence and recognition for these democratic principles and a commitment to engagement of the constituency in deciding every question up for decision. Every single question. We are different than independent candidates because we all adhere to these principles and this way of conducting our democratic affairs, which means the public will be engaged. Be that, like how we engage, like you were saying, meet the community associations and all that. This is a process we have to learn and discover, because this has not happened before. So we have to develop this, I mean the people of Ireland have to discover how to put in place our exercising of our democracy and our consultation and gathering of decision making. People deserve that you're fully honest, and even if you get it wrong, being fully honest, the people won't hold it against you. I guarantee you that. They're not out there looking for some, God who's perfect, right, infallible person, right? They know you're a human, right? And the issue is, if they see that you're being honest and you get it wrong, well then look, correct me and we'll do it right next time.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And provided you're having the consultation in the limited resource that you have, that you would have certain ward funds for development of activities and so on, and of course you should be hammering on the council floor to say, give us access to all these community halls, etc.,
Exactly.
right? Who are being funded by the council anyway,
Yes.
right? So that they should be all used, and that the council should adopt its constitutional duty of providing the forum for the democratic representation of the people, right?
Yeah.
We should insist that they do that, and where they don't, you go back to the constituents and say, I've challenged them in council on this point, they're not doing it, right? And you will find any other council member in there, or with any decency, will come with you, right? And they will probably try and drag it and pull it in every direction. You then have to remain focused. The issue is that we come together based on what is common for us. That is the collective common interest of the people to come together to ensure that we are the ones deciding the policy of the state. Because in the absence of that, you can have any policy you wish, and you're wasting your time because you have no say. Unless the people are empowered to make the decisions, it's useless you having a philosophy for capitalism or for socialism or anything else. You don't decide.